Hello and welcome. Today I will want to look with you to the new set of Eldraine and then mostly, actually, the old parts about it. So on September 8th, a new Eldraine set will be coming out. We know it will feature Ashiok. There will be some nightmares in there. We know it will feature this Witch King, I guess. You can see here that it is actually an old guy, so don't thirst too much. And we know that these gingerbread people will return for it. But I thought let's look at the old set. It is from 2019. Yeah. So not that old, but still interesting to look at it, I would say. So in this world there are 5 realms, where the first one, and they are centered around the colors of magic. So there is the white aligned one, which is about Ardenvale. You can see here the castle, and there are rings. Up above is the place where new knights are chosen. Here's where the loyalty lives, and there's like, I guess, normal people, but we don't really know about it too much. And you can see that every castle has a virtue that they live around. So for Ardenvale, it is loyalty. And what they try to do is to protect the realm. And whoever becomes a knight, they have to be perfectly within that virtue. So we will notice this castle in the background, but also notice like these bridges. They are a sign of being around Ardenvale, and of course the plains, because these are plains of some sort. Then there is a cycle I want to go over immediately. The first one being the paladins. So these are knights that show what virtue they are about. They are perfect in their own virtues. There are knights that embody all the 5 virtues of the realm as well. But these are just, for example, here about loyalty. And what's also special about these is that they also all are looking for their king, because King Kenrith is missing at this point. Here it says, even when hope is but a small flame fighting the night. Also, she is wearing a light, which is another theme in this set. I will serve the absent king. For the first time telling us about the fact that the king is missing. So the second castle is Castle Embereth, and they really don't have a castle. What you see here is the Burning Yard, which is a wooden place where fire mages fight. So you can imagine why it is called the Burning Yard. But Embereth is actually the place around these tournament grounds where you can see the tents of knights that come here to go fight each other and have jousting battles and such. So Embereth is about courage, it's about fighting, it's about going in, it's about the knightly part where you aren't afraid to go on a mission. And without them, the realm would falter and fall. And then when we look at their paladin, we see a few interesting things. So first of all, again, he's looking for the king, of course. And he says the king would die for the realm. I would not hesitate to do the same for him. So he doesn't hesitate to do anything for his realm. So secondly, of course, this one is riding a dragon-like creature instead of a horse, which is one way to show you're courageous. Then he doesn't wear a shield of any kind, and he does this on purpose because the Embereth Knights, they don't believe in shields. They just believe in their swords. You can see his flaming sword on his back. He seems carefree with it. And actually, to become a knight in Embereth, you need to place your sword in a stone that is called the Iron Crag. And when you complete this feat, you get the power over pyromancy and sometimes over a sort of fear magic. So this is interesting because Ashok is into that as well, of course. So maybe you will be Grixis. I just thought of that. What we also see is because they hate shields, whenever they break a shield from their opponents, they put it on their armor. So they still have some armor, but it's only that they get armor once they defeat their first opponent. So that is interesting as well. So the next castle is the green one, which is Garenbrig. It's about strength, and it is about protecting the realm against the wilds. And together with Ardenvale, Garenbrig is on the border between the realm and the wilds. And this means that, well, they need to be strong. And of course, Ardenvale needs to be strong, but they are strong in numbers more than anything. Garenbrig doesn't really have a lot of knights, because to become a knight, you have to move these stones, and they are massive, if you can believe it, because they are higher than trees, as you can see here as well. So you need to be really big. You're probably a giant if you can do this, but there are some human knights here as well. But usually these knights are giant, and this one doesn't have flavor. This is because the Garenbrig knights, they don't believe in words as much. So they mostly believe in action. And you can see that he's riding his boar into battle before saying anything. As actually the other knights, you could see they were standing around. This one is moving, and I think that is on purpose. Then the black aligned castle, which is Loch Twain. So I wrote this a lot like lock, like a lake, but it's lock, like a LOC at least, and then Twain, like between or something. It is a floating castle, and beneath it you can see a cloud and some rain. This is because these rain clouds, they are what keeps it afloat apparently, but otherwise it's also reflecting on the mood of Ayara. And their virtue is persistence, staying around, but also, I guess, never giving up. And it is reflected in their knights as well. If we look at their paladin, it's a 4-mana paladin. Again, I feel they are very big in mana cost, but doesn't matter. This one says, I will find the king. Of course, if I have to ride from summer to winter and back again. Doesn't matter how far they need to go. Some visual things that we see here, which is actually only one thing, which is these thorns that the horse has to ride through. Of course, that means that the horse needs persistence as well, for one thing. But rose thorns are actually a theme on Eldraine as well. They are used by the elves. They signify the wilds, and I guess in some ways beauty. We saw it with the Witch King that I showed just before, but you will see it with some of the elves as well, who also live in the wilds. Then we have Ventress, which is about knowledge. The realm would lose itself in darkness otherwise, and these people, they venture deep into the wilds and into the darkness, looking for more answers. I guess these would be the first to fall into Ashok's traps, actually. This one is sort of floating, it seems, but it is actually standing on a small piece that is in the water. Don't know how it stays afloat, I guess some magic as well. And it is on the actual loch, the Lochmere. So it is a bit confusing in that way. Their paladin is flying on an owl, of course, because they are knowledgeable as well, and fighting a dragon. So it also sort of tells us these knights are not just, for example, only about knowledge. They also need the other virtues as well to become a good knight. This one says, someone knows where the king is. They can't expect to keep it a secret from us. well, Oko did keep it a secret from them. But of course, eventually they found out. Now, the next cycle is a little bit more complicated. It's not just about these virtues of the castles. So, first of all, let's go a little bit in order again. So we have Sir Alyn, the Lion's Claw, and in the background you can see the highest tower of Ardenville, and you can see his knights around them because they are all about numbers and loyalty, of course. But if we look at his flavor, it's not just all about loyalty anymore. So it says, the realm must never yield to the chaos of the wilds. Of course, this is a little bit about order, but it is also about being very against the wilds and resistance against them. So these sirs, they are higher knights and they get their status because they embody all of the virtues, but mostly, of course, the one of their own realm. So that's interesting that these realms, they at least used to be peaceful towards each other. Looking here, we see him in some flavors. So we have this Weaselback Redcap. These are goblins that apparently ride weasels. There are more like oversized creatures like this that are used as mounts. But this one is pretty funny to me. And Sir Alyn says, I would rather cast myself into the abyss than let my blood stain the cap of those monsters. And that is maybe a little bit extra, because these goblins, yes, they are aggressive, but they are also a little bit misunderstood. So one rule in Eldraine is that not all creatures from the same creature type are the same. That's one thing. But most of these goblins, they just get angry when you touch their steel. Yeah, they aren't usually this angry, but they have been cast out by the people of the realm, and now they are angry. So yeah, it's like chicken and egg, like what happened first, we don't know. Well, Sir Alyn is in more flavor text though. He is also here with this new knight from Ardenville. In the wilds, your true training will begin, he says. So he seems to be just against the wilds, basically, is what he is mostly known for. He's also here. Here he says, a good steed will carry you home. So protection of his friends is important to him. But a great steed will carry you to glory. So will help you finish your adventure. Adventures being one of the mechanics that are important and we'll get into a bit more later. The next Surdo is Sir Kara the Bold. I use Scryfall, by the way, to get the cards. This way it's easier for me to talk card by card in the order I want. But Sir Kara the Bold without destroying my computer. You can see, by the way, that I don't mind. Like, it's this huge Excel that I'm using. But Sir Kara the Bold, a 5 mana Sir that deals damage for every instant, and that is why she has this shocking magic. Actually interesting, because the Knights of Embereth usually only learn fire magic. Well, one thing is you can see the shield on her armor, which is one of the main things of these people, visually at least. And she also doesn't only tell us about courage, she also tells us about duty and honor. Now they are enough, but beating you will be a pleasure too. You can see the Castle Embereth, or at least like the Burning Yard here. And interestingly, we see how it is used, because here you can see the people that are watching the fights. They are in the burning castle, the Burning Yard. So apparently they are fearless as well. And I wanted to show you a little bit more about that pyromancy. I'll do it again. So here again you see the broken shield, so that's really a thing here on her chest, and you can see what you need to do to pass the test. So here we see someone walking through flames. That's one of the things. You need to walk through flames while you are being taunted by a stone called the Iron Crag. And when you get through, you get to put your sword in that stone. So it's like a reverse Arthurian legend. And it says the greatest challenge isn't the stifling heat, but the crushing weight of those who failed before. And in the art, interestingly, you can see those who failed before, which are the swords that are floating all around our winning knight here, and that are in the stones here maybe. So maybe these won, I'm not sure. But at least she seems to have won because her sword is already aflame. She has touched the stone, it seems like. So that is the feat that you need to go through. And this is very interesting because every realm has a special artifact that they have gotten from ancient times from the elves. These are actually elven artifacts. But most of the artifacts are shown on the card. With Embereth, this is not the case. Here you can see one of the weapons that they got from their artifact. The artifact is actually the Iron Crag, the stone that you can see here in the background, where people have put their swords in. And you can only get it out when you are courageous enough, when you have no fear. Or well, when you do have fear, but when you can overcome it, can control it maybe. Not even control it, can use it. It's a better word. You get your sword back, and that is what we see here. So one of the swords is actually the piece of equipment. It also says it's easier to use when you have more attacking creatures. Of course, you are more courageous when you have friends around you that also attack. But also, it returns to his user in some way, but I feel this is because multiple creatures can put their swords in the stone. So in this way, the artifact is still the Iron Crag, but I guess it would be a little bit lame to just show a stone with swords in them. So I think that is why they made it an actual equipment and made it about one of the swords. But I think the flavor here is still that it can be multiple swords that are used. So I thought this was important because this is a very... the card is used a lot, I guess. To continue, I can't really get rid of these all the time. But Fervent Champion also has it in the background. So another card that was used a lot also has the Iron Crag, I think, in the background. I'm not sure though, because it isn't really next to the Burning Yard. And this is also not how the Burning Yard looks in the other arts, but I guess up for interpretation what this is and where it really is. But back to Sir Kyra. You can see her here in the flavor as well. Remembered all the great heroes who were careful and never did anything risky. Me neither. And I'm not sure if it's her. I don't think so in the art, but maybe it's one of the people she thought. And well, they are going for their mission. One of the things that you, or two actually, because there are the rose thorns again, but also the lights that guide people. These are either from fairies or from magic from the humans. And then another thing to note is, before we go back to a little bit more from Kyra, these red caps again. So they are actually in massive numbers, of course. This is a goblin thing, they always are like this. But they are also, I guess, courageous in some ways. So if we look at this, the red cap raiders, here they are again, the goblins. Sir Kyra actually admires them for their courage, but they are knights because she despises their savagery, which doesn't really say anything, but it seems like they don't really embody the other virtues of the knights, and you can see it here as well. Claim the firstborn, these goblins keep stealing young, but it isn't actually only the fault of these goblins. I guess they are still misunderstood, because it was a deal that they struck to get these. So it doesn't really mean that he is a bad guy per se. We don't know the whole story. These goblins are also flung about by giants, whether they are knights or giants of the wild, because these giants are a part of the fair people, and the fair people being all the beings of the wilds, according to the people around. But like I said, the red caps, they just fight because they're steel. They're stolen steel. It is touched, and that is why they fight. They seem angry and stuff because they are, I guess, ugly, but they shouldn't be thought of as just angry people. I guess they like fighting, but the humans like it as well. They fit perfectly, actually, in the Iron Cracklands, in Embereth, in the Burning Yard, because, well, for one, they seem to use. I'm not sure if this means this, but they seem to use fire magic too. They are courageous. They are apparently savage, but isn't that what they want? And then they like to fight, so they are perfect for there. I would say keep them around. Plus, like I said, not every goblin is the same, and you can see that for Grumgully, who offers fun mushrooms to the people of the wilds. Let's keep it at that. And the knights aren't always as virtuous as they say either. So for example, here we can see this ogre who had been protecting his pass. The knights, they wanted to get by him, and the ogre tried to say something to them, but they tried to go on anyways, so he took their clothes. But that is just and armor and shields. That is just because he wanted to be one of them. We can see that because the knights kept returning wearing nothing but bruises, so they lost their armor. So they decided to just pretend it was on their side, and the ogre is okay with it. It isn't always fight first, ask questions later, but these knights of Embereth seem to be this way, and I think they can accept the goblins a little bit better. So I'm hoping this will be in the next set too. But back to more Sirs. We have Sir Conrad the Grim. And this one I think is interesting because he also isn't really what he seems. I think his flavor is because he deals the damage. I think you know him, but he deals the damage whenever anything enters the graveyard or leaves it. I think he is made to help people pass on to the afterlife and maybe bring them back safely. This is just all about what Loch Twain is about, persistence. And their magical artifact is named the Cauldron, which helps bring people back, basically. Well, in the lore, it seems to be a fuel vat for the queen. But we'll get into that later, I guess. I think Sir Conrad is actually on the good side, even if he looks nothing like it. I think that's also why he doesn't get a flavor to explain himself. We have Sir Eleonora, who can make the right judgments. Also no flavor. But you can see she draws a card, which is basic blue stuff. And she has Ward, actually. Sort of. Which is ahead of her time, so maybe that's why she befits her castle so much. You can see it in the background as well, by the way, which is... I wonder, does Sir Conrad have the same? Let's look at this a little bit closer. Does Sir Conrad have... Yeah, he does. Loch Twain is here in the shadows, I think. Well, I'm not sure. I think that's Loch Twain. And she has her castle behind her as well. And the same actually with Sir Farron, so I think this is the same for all the Sirs. So you can see Garenbrick here in the background. Words are pointless. Actually, flavor for a green card is what you do with your hammer that counts. So again, of course, still pointing towards action. She has a bear as well, which is fun because she's a 2/2, which is flavorful. And the last one, we have had all the 5 colors, but there's this one as well, which is another Sir, the hero of Asheville. So I'm not sure where she belongs. Maybe in all 3 realms. There are knights that have passed multiple feats, let's say. She has done the Ironcrag feat. I don't know about the other ones, but might be. Her steed seems to be like zombie-like, so might be, actually. She, well, no one has actually survived the Locthwain feat, but we'll get into that later. Squires throughout the realm aspire to her mix of panache and martial prowess. She's just a good fighter, and she inspires other knights. Moving back to more Ardenville, we see Ardenville in the back of Ardenville Tactician, which also tells us more about the loyalty and some more creatures, some mystical creatures that are about this. The Griffin, the castle that prizes loyalty above all. The bond between knight and griffin is unmatched. So this is interesting. I'm hoping to see more of these griffins. There are a few more, like I think, or a few even. No, just one. This one. But it doesn't seem at all like the other one. It seems angry here. One of the feathers is being plucked by someone else than Tulane, while Tulane says that he did steal one of the feathers. Tulane, by the way, important character because he seems to be the teller of the tales of these people. And why is that interesting? Well, it seems like Eldraine is being shaped by stories. So if he can tell new stories, it means he must be very powerful here, even though he is kind of acting like the fool in most of the stories. The last one with March of the Machine especially. He is mentioned here as well. Only the lion knows more stories than I do. Even though the lion doesn't really return in any shape or form. He is the keeper of the fables. So might be that there's even a higher power that shares his stories with the keeper of fables still, which means that the keeper of fables knows even more stories. So Tulane might be a little bit of a scam, actually. I showed you the Embereth artifact before, sort of. The one from Ardenville is a circle. The circle of loyalty, which also means that the castle that they live in already was kept by the elves, or at least the upper part. This tells a little bit about their architecture as well. But the circle of loyalty, it is a circle you have to walk through, and if you are legit, you can walk through it. Otherwise, you will be burned by this circle, and then you will be healed still, but you will never be able to try it a second time. You can see a sword floating here as well. I'm guessing he needs to take that with him as he moves through that circle. The people of Ardenville, of course, we know this about the color, but whenever someone goes against their vows, they are, well, for example, they can't talk anymore. It seems like they're in pain as well. But they are also often exiled from the castle, which means you need to go to the Wilds or another castle. But without being able to talk, you probably won't get in there, because the other realms also value, well, keeping your vows. There's actually, no, there's no castle that is okay with not keeping your vows. The people of Ardenville, they have a sort of magic aura that helps them be loyal to their friends, and this means that they always will fight for each other, but they also will magically protect each other when they are nearby. Here they say to the king, to the circle, and to the realm, and to not dying. But actually, naming the circle also gives you a little bit of protection. We see the castle in the background here as well. The kings are named by finishing a quest from the questing beast. These 2 kings are actually special because usually there's only 1 king or queen at a time. They can be from all the realms, but this time they were both from Ardenville, making it extra special, I guess, but a lot of power is there as well now, so I guess Eldraine is in order as much as it can be. But loyalty isn't only to the crown, it is also to all the people around you. It is even better if you can also show loyalty to everyone. There shouldn't be loyalty towards one, it should be for the all. And Linden is one of the main characters here in Ardenville. This is a lord cycle, I wasn't sure what to call it, but all lands have a lord that doesn't really stand in the hierarchy of the realm itself, but it's a little bit outside of it. And with Linden, this is because she is the ruler of the realm actually, and she has something to say about all of Eldraine instead of only Ardenville. She says, "Until my last breath, I will defend the realm." You can also see a lot of the Ardenville vibe here with all the circles in her armor. Those return a lot as well. I don't really know what I mean. Maybe it's because it's the circle of knights, you know, from the stories. By the way, the questing beasts, you probably know them. But this guy actually gives people quests, and it doesn't do so often. It does so like once every 50 years or something. So he really has a lazy job. We have the lonesome unicorn, which also shows us about the loyalty here. And these unicorns, I hope we see a little bit more of them, except for just this little piece of sadness. But it is interesting that there was once a knight from Ardenville that rode a unicorn. I think that is pretty cool too. The loyalty also returns in True Love's Kiss, where even though this guy is apparently like a bad person, be careful there, some people deserve their curses, he is still being saved by the True Love's Kiss. And flavorfully, this destroys enchantments, which being cast in stone also is. Of course, stone is also an artifact, so it's like double flavor. Like I said, knights don't always have to be just from one realm, like Inspiring Veteran, who is from both in some ways, but he also shows loyalty because he is all for his daughter. His daughter actually shows more of his of the Embereth vibe of this card, the courage. Can't seem to click this one. Embereth is all about being with multiple people. Whenever you are with multiple people, the strength of Embereth is stronger. One interesting thing to note about this card is the Legend of the Gilded Knights, which returns in many flavors, but we're not really sure. Oh, the Circle of Loyalty, by the way. I'm thinking about this because of this circle thing here. Maybe that's it. Maybe that is why all these knights have circles on their armor. We also see a monster that we haven't seen before, but it seems like some kind of freakin', maybe? Might be what it is. Another circle, Rally for the Throne, shows us another circle. If you're as loyal as you claim, now is the time to show it. Interestingly, this shows one of the other mechanics, which is adamant. If you use 3 or more of the mana, you get something else. But mostly we see Queen Linden talking about loyalty and how people still have to show it. So action is still, important for these people, of course, as well. One other virtue that I was able to find is righteousness. Not entirely sure what this means in the whole of it. But we see someone slaying a dragon being another creature type here. This one is pretty small actually. Sir Damon looked at the dragon and saw the faces of every innocent it had devoured. Suddenly his sword blazed like the sun. So righteousness can actually give the people of Arnhemville some power as well. Here we see the ritual around the circle. So really funny how often these circles return. It's just like the broken shields that we saw before from Embereth. But Silver Flame is the name of the flame actually. So they also use sort of fire magic. Tempered by fire and united in virtue, the Knights of Arnhemville fight with a single unbreakable will. Vigilance, yeah, not sure what that has to do with it. But Silver Flame returns as a name in one card, which is a squire that has to protect Arnhemville from the borderlands. And this is the only reason I think Arnhemville is on the border with the Wilds actually. Because they need to light the beacons along it. And I think this is because so that the people on adventures can return their way home by following these beacons. And these beacons actually are a theme as well, because they are being mimicked by many of the fairy who lead other knights to the right place or maybe astray. Venerable Knight also has Arnhemville in the background, and it's also about loyalty because she gives this sword, and this sort of gives them power in a magical way. So these kinds of fairy tale, beautiful moments can really actually make people stronger here. So I think that is fun that they found a way to make knightlyhood real, in the sense that it makes you stronger. Oh. What's this? Okay. It's not working. It's doing all sorts of things. Okay, here we see one of the knights who has been deemed worthy, and you can see how they step out of the circle. It's nice that we see it from multiple sides. We see a circle again on their armor. So here it confirms that people have to step through it, and their honor determines whether they burn or shine. But honor seems to be something different than just loyalty, so I'm not really sure about that. More circles with Kenrith. Around him is one of the circles, which also means sort of holiness. So that is interesting to me. We see a circle of sun around his breastplate as well. And of course, one thing that is interesting, Kenrith is not only the king of Arnhemville, but of all the realms, which is why he has 5 colors. So the more you know. Probably knew that kind of, but... Hey, another griffin. This one being garrison, and I think what is most fun is like you have these towers, but the griffin's tower just has grass on it so that it can chill. He is also placed there because he is the most keen-eyed guardian of Arnhemville, and I think that's really smart. They are loyal and they are like scopes. The Mace of the Valiant seems to be another sort of legendary equipment, but it's just a mace. Seems to also mean that Valiance can grant power in this realm. Because equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on it, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a charge counter on it. So the more people you fight for, the stronger you become. Then more griffins. Actually, there are more griffins than I thought, and I just wish we see more. But we see Arnhemville in the background here as well, and some new clues about it because we see some bridges leading up and more buildings on the side here. There's a wall here as well, which seems a little bit double because this is so high. And in the background we see some maybe mountains, I think it is. But we see most of all that they become stronger with the number of creatures you control, and when they attack, you create a 2/2 for every opponent. So this squadron also inspires other knights to fight, which I find logical. And another proof of that people can be from 2 castles before we move on to Embereth, which is one of the castles he went to, is this. He endured the white-hot blaze of the circle and the sweltering heat of the Ironcrag, and he emerged victorious. Now I have some fun things to begin with, because this is a little tiny bit that I really love, which is Sir Brannigan, who says, build a moat if we're lucky. Note that word. It can swim. And Wolverine, he can swim. Here, Lucky Clover, we see Sir Brannigan always remembered to kiss his good luck charm, having lost his foot to Wolverines the last time he forgot. So I hope in the next set we will get Sir Brannigan back without a foot. And with this Lucky Clover, maybe you'll get an ability like this about adventures if they are still there. So Brimstone Trebuchet is in the Burning Yard, which is interesting because they could set their own castle on fire, which I think is funny. The Ironcrag returns with the Ironcrag Pyromancer, who also tells about fear. So some of these mages can use fear magic as well. Fear of fire is a sensible instinct. If I were you, I'd be terrified. But she isn't you. I also think these like planes are really cool too. And she is kind of setting fire to the forest, but that's what they do. Jousting is the main, let's say, event for the people of the Burning Yard. It is what the knights must be good at. In the background you see the emblem of Embereth as well. And it says, life is a tournament that rewards the bold, says Sir Lane. I don't think they return. But not only the Embereth people can join, the Ardenville people can play along as well. You can see this is in the same Burning Yard. Just a little bit of a smaller tournament field, it feels like, because of these palisades that are a bit different than the ones we saw before. It also says no weapon stays on the rack for long in the Burning Yard. They like to use different kinds of weapons, which I think is creative, like this one, which is a flame too. For every scar I've received, I've given 10 back. Sort of saying again that the shield, which you see here again, on his chest, isn't as important as mace or flail. The Vale is another place that we don't know too much about, but it seems to be around Garenbrick. I am not sure though. And I was mostly curious about what he is selling. It's like a fetus of a minotaur, a mirror that is possessed, a skull, like potions, rubies, weird stones, I don't know. Are these toes of something, maybe? But I found that interesting. And there are, if I am not mistaken, I think there is, and now you are, yeah, there is this one, where you can see the guy again, but this time a little bit differently. And you can see he's selling magic beans too. So that is one other theme here. And more vials, and I'm not sure what these other things are. But I feel like this is very fairy tale like, how small his wares are. We have Searing Barrage, where we see that the Lochmere is very close to the Ironcrag stone, which I find interesting. It emerged from the coldest depths of Lochmere only to face the fires of Ironcrag. Or it could mean that the fires of Ironcrag are in the hands of these pyromancers. Why they were crossing Lochmere then? Not sure. Slaying Fire, here we see Sir Kyra again. The purest virtue burns brighter than the sun and hotter than dragonfire. Slaying another dragon. Slaying dragons, of course, a very knightly thing, as we see here as well. And then we have here another person, but this one is riding a dragon, and he seems to be having a lot of fun. So slaying dragons isn't all about work. It's also fun. Work can be your hobby too, like if you want. Moving on to Garenbrick, we find the castle and the knights that are all about strength and preventing hunger. So hunting is a little bit of a thing knights do. But you can see it here, they kill a pheasant because, well, Hunger is important to stop, it says here. A keen eye and steady hand are essential for defeating most foes, including hunger, says the Knight of Garenbrig. So eating and food are a very important part of Eldraine and Garenbrig. Going on, we see Curious Bear with again the thorns here in the background, which signify that we are in the wilds. We see a witch's hand here, which is a small note to the fact that this gingerbread house is inhabited by a witch, not by gingerbread people. And they're eating it. You might know how this story ends. The actual inn is actually an interesting place to be because it might be more important as we go on. It is on the edge between Garenbrig and the wilds. It says here, warmth, safety, a fully stocked larder. You'll find nothing like Edgewall Keep in the wilds, I promise you that. And mostly what this says is, 1, food is important again, but 2, before you go on an adventure you might stop at Edgewall Keep, so I feel like this will be an important place in the story somewhere, maybe in the next set. It is also mentioned here, where we see the Edgewall Innkeeper again, Scalan. He says, headed to the wilds, beware the dead riders who serve the Shadow Queen. So he's actually a good guy, he seemed a little bit evil. Here in the art again, we see the thorns. This time a little bit less obvious, but apparently they're skeleton knights, aside from the zombie knights from Loch Twain. Then we have an interesting creature type that we haven't seen a lot about, which is the trolls. I imagine they have like some sort of country because they at least have a king. And this king is all about eating food and a lot of it. Which is interesting because the other trolls are as well. So this Clapbridge troll wants you to sacrifice goats to him, otherwise he will attack you. Basically that's the whole flavor. That's one troll. And then the other one is eating a chicken in a very gruesome way. But I hope there's more about these trolls. Then we learn more about Garenbrig. Strength is not the only thing. Weapons can be important too. Countless knights of Garenbrig owe their lives to his fearless craftsmanship. So interestingly, this guy is apparently known. So might be a legendary creature later. Then we have the Flaxen Intruder, which is all about strength, because she killed 3 bears at least. There's another creature type, which is the Tree Folk, which we haven't seen a lot about. There's only 2 in this set. First one here is in Townville. We haven't seen more about this place either, if it isn't an English word, which I couldn't find. It's all about strength too, because it says, right now you are a feeble stick, but I will help you grow some rings. He probably says, maybe to these butterflies, but maybe to another tree. And the second one is the Feybarrow Elder, which you might know because it is important for multi-color decks. For each color among permanents you control, add 1 mana of that color. So could gain you 5 mana. There is a Squire for Garenbrig as well. This is a cycle, by the way, too. This one says, find him a weapon as big as his dreams. Big weapons and being able to carry them, that is important to the Garenbrig people too. So you might see a lot of people with weapons that are way too big for their bodies. Not the case, I guess, with Yorvo, although this is very heavy. You can see that he is even taller than Garenbrig itself, and Garenbrig itself is even taller than a tree. So you might imagine how tall Yorvo himself must be. You can see it here too, because he can basically grow as much as you want him to. He ends with 4+1 counters, starting as a 4/4, but then whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1 counter on him. Then if the creature is greater than him, put another one on him. So he is the lord of these people. This is from the lord cycle. And he basically says whenever another person enters his domain, he grows stronger. And this is interesting because when you compare him to Lady Linden, you see that Linden makes everyone around her stronger, but Yorvo makes himself stronger when more people enter his court. But when another giant or someone bigger than him, doesn't matter if it's a giant actually, but they have to be giant, you know what I mean, enters his court, he gets even larger, even faster. Their artifact is the Great Henge, which is actually the stone thing that you see around this portal, not the portal itself. But the henge, when you move these stones around, the place the portal brings you to is altered. So that is why this is a little bit different than Fabled Passage, which brings you to a random place. Or random, it's not really said, but seemingly random at least. So what this flavor is the Great Henge brings you to a place that you can choose in the wilds, and when you get lost there, you return only in a year and a day. So many nights have gone in here. That's how you become, that's not how you become a knight, but it might be a way to become one. Because if you survive, you will be a knight. It's very hard and most people don't return. One other way to become a knight is just to move these stones, because that means you have enough strength. We move on. There are more giants in Garenbrick, which is interesting because in most realms there are only humans coming in. But giants are allowed here because they are big. They are all like the previous one, which had the adventure spell Fertile Footsteps. They are all about food. And a small sub-theme are the beans that you see here, but you also saw with Merchant of the Veil, his alternate art. They're all about growing you, and whenever you eat these beans, you become a giant. The flavor of this card, or at least the mechanics of it, also tell it. They look tasty, but best to plant them. And then it says you may eat 2 of the beans and become a giant, basically. Otherwise, create 3 food tokens because you planted the beans. So basically, the mechanics do what the flavor says. Very Garenbrick of them. There are more giants. This one is basically as big as the realm, as he covers himself up with a cloak that is as big as the plains, which is pretty impressive. You can see that the windmills and the houses are taken with him, and he picks them up with ease. Bit gross, because this means that moss has been growing, or at least grass has been growing on his robe. In black we see that a weapon used from the giants, which is just a giant spear basically, but it has a pig on it because it has been roasting. And in red we have a giant that is stomping someone. Of course, this is the famous stomp, which deals 2 damage to any target and can be prevented if you didn't. But basically telling us that some people's stories end with a stomp instead of glory. It did seem like that was actually a knight from Embereth. But it is possible to turn into a knight, but might be that you grow some vines as well. But this one person doesn't seem to mind. Also note the clothes choice of these people, which is much like a sort of castle, even though these people don't have a castle. We have Rampart Smasher, where Sir Farron, the hengehammer, says that he has strength and courage, just way too much of it. And if she says that because she rides bears, that's a lot. You do see, because of his clothing, that he has joined the knights, but seems like he has lost his privilege of that and is now attacking them, maybe because he wasn't allowed to belong anymore. I did notice, always too late with those things, but I did notice that there was a unicorn in front, so it might be the Sir Alan. Outmuscle here, this is a way to become a knight, because if you can outmuscle a bear, you must be strong. And we see the Hengewalker, which is actually telling us a lot about the Great Henge. It says everything that inhabits Garenbrick is affected by the wild magic flowing through it. So basically maybe saying that this golem either came alive because of it or became a giant because of it. It also seems like this has the same patterns as the henge on his body, you can see here. So maybe this is actually a henge himself. We have the Stone Coil Serpent, which is a little bit the same, cast out of Garenbrick for his crimes. Anor turned to fey magic to fashion the perfect weapon for his revenge. but the giants might be able to take him, I feel. I did want to return to this because I forgot. But we have Sir Eleonora, I'm pretty sure right now, because we see the blue unicorn horn here. And when you look at Eleonora, you can see that she has it and her sword is blue as well. So I'm pretty sure that this is Sir Eleonora here, which I find interesting. This might be Castle of Ventress then, but we will get to that. Then we have the most interesting story, I would say, which is the story of Ayara. So like I said before, the elves have been run out of this realm, but the elves were the rulers before. And Ayara is an elf and is a ruler still. She is the ruler of Loch Twain and she has been living there for the longest time. And you might wonder, how does she stay so young? So that is a legit question, and it is not entirely answered per se. So what she says is that morning shifts seamlessly to celebration as she chooses her next suitor. So what happens, or what you need to do when you want to become a knight for Loch Twain, is you need to complete a quest for Ayara, and there's only one quest she gives knights every year. So actually there's only one knight at a time in Loch Twain, if we are to believe that. But no one has ever succeeded. So they try to find this artifact for her and they never return. And because of that, apparently, while she hasn't found the Cauldron of Eternity, which is meant to keep someone young forever, she hasn't found this. She has had people search for it, but she has never found this. Because they are searching for it, apparently she still is living forever. So why does she want the Cauldron then, if she already is living forever? Well, this is an interesting question. Let's explore. Well, first of all, we need to learn something about the Loch Twain Knights. They want to persist. Persistence is the most important thing to them, and we can see it here that Loch Twain Knights take pride in being the last one standing in a fight or on the dance floor. So it doesn't matter where it is, the parties of Ayara or on the battlefield, they want to be the last one standing. And it's we see here a little bit more about a certain kind of knight, which isn't really then a knight, but is like the Black Lances, who travel deep into the wild, sometimes for years at a time, in search of the lost Cauldron of Eternity. And here it is, the Cauldron of Eternity. What it does is it keeps you alive and even young forever. So my theory is that Ayara sends knights to this cauldron every time, and she maybe puts them in the cauldron or something to drink from them and become immortal. That is my theory. I've been saying it a little bit too much. So a new story, which is about the Cauldron Familiar, which you are probably familiar with, is standing on the cauldron. And why is this? Well, he likes to hunt a certain kind of prey. Every day this cat returns to kill the same mouse, which sinks again into the cauldron's brew to be reborn anew, and then the next day the cat returns to kill it again. I think this is the most effed up story of all of Eldraine. And that is impressive. One interesting other thing I found is that the cauldron has been found by other people. So we see one of the elves, I think here, putting someone in the cauldron. So it has been found by creatures. And there we see what it does. It keeps you forever young. We see old hands here and then a young face sort of emerging out of it, and old hair as well. Those who say you only live once have never been touched by the Cauldron of Eternity, which helps you live at least twice. There we see the flavor of the morning. We see in the background someone, her previous husband, has been is going to his funeral, and she already has her new husband walking her down the aisle. Even as we mourn the last, we look to the next with joy. Hopefully my new suitor will bring the cauldron home. And they never will. Well, the people of Eldraine, they keep on fighting even after death. So they have a spirit army too, which is interesting. And there are a lot of zombie knights here as well. Like the Murderous Rider, which you know very well probably. And then the Oathsworn Knight, basically the same, keeps on going. Is based on the Black Knight apparently, who is meant to never stop. And then there's the Foulmire Knight, which is even more interesting. I'm not sure if this is a place actually, but what we sort of seem to learn is that he got profane insight. And this hooks into my theory of him having sought for the cauldron, having found it, being killed for the insight, and now he is a 1/1 Death Touch knight trying to tell everyone, but he can't. Then we have the alive version of this knight who has killed the dragon, I think, to curry favor with the Yari, and his quest is to marry a Yara or die trying. You will. Last one for Eldraine, the Gargoyle, which are coming alive in order to serve their queen as well. So even the artifacts here turn to serve once more. Moving on to Castle Ventress, where we see someone entering a story, literally. Apparently they have huge books that you can step into, which is a pretty cool thought. I wonder what story you would step into if you had this power. But in this Castle of Ventress, their artifact is a mirror, which is also a thing that is often used in fairy tales. And this mirror, it can tell you anything. It knows everything about at least the world and maybe outside of it, but we don't know that per se. The magic mirror does require an offer, which is that you need to tell it a secret that it didn't know yet. And as it knows almost everything, you will have to try your best. This mirror was made when a very knowledgeable sage was asked a question by a redcap, a goblin, and he couldn't answer. So the question stayed in this mage's mind and eventually formed into a magic bubble that became the mirror, and still it seeks that one answer. Isn't that a nice fairy tale? Here in Castle Ventress, it is really important to get your sleep in because knowledge is the highest virtue. This is why the midnight clock exists. It tells you don't go outside after midnight. But probably there is also something else except for your sleep schedule that makes it important to stay inside after 12. Like losing your glass shoe. The mirror can also see your own secrets. It can see into your soul. It can replicate you, apparently. The people of Ventress, they really want to dive deep into knowledge, but this also means that people can be overwhelmed. This is the other side, but they can also only see darkness because of all the light around them. Because as you see here, the knowledge is illuminating, but it can blind. Illumination can. On Ventress there are also griffins, sort of signifying that loyalty is important here too. This one does look a little bit more like an owl, so maybe there are like owl griffins here as well. It says if we didn't guard our secrets, they wouldn't remain secrets for long, which is true, but knowledge does not have to be a secret. According to the merfolk, sometimes, because not all creatures are the same when they are of a creature type, sometimes it does need to be, and these merfolk, they sort of take you underwater and really drown you in your curiosity. Some though also like to show you everything, maybe too much. Ask a merfolk even a simple question and the answer is a journey far beyond the known. They will take you down these waterfalls maybe a little bit too deep. Again. You can be saved. I don't know what this is, but it looked pretty cool. And I really thought about the aesthetic about these merfolk. Because, yeah, seeing this on the water would be really creepy already. Then they are known to fight with humans and usually they do win. Warlost mage, your feet are on land, yet you're in over your head, aren't you? It seems like they are stronger than most even Ventress mages and archmages. Some want to grow legs, and not because they want to marry someone, but out of vengeance for someone. I wonder what the story behind this person's vengeance is then. It is important, before we are going out into the wilds, which we will do soon, to know that whatever you seek might come in way too plenty. For example, here we see Renaud, who wished for an army to sweep away his enemies. The Fey King, who is Oko, he smiled and gave him this army of brooms. It is something, but your wish wasn't fulfilled, was it? We also see that the merfolk have like artifacts that they use. This one, just a spyglass to see above water, which is interesting to me. If you see this though, run. In Ventress, there's an interesting theme, which is about these keyholes. And they are seen in their windows, like they are the same shape, in the shape of a keyhole usually. And there are these keyholes even walking around. This one even has keys as legs, which is really cute. Castle Ventress has no locks on its doors, but interlopers rarely make it past the foyer. Sort of still a keyhole in that way. We see it on the chest of Ventress Gargoyle as well, which is all about protecting you, but also like stealing the secrets of your opponents. And we see it on Clockwork Servant, who works there. He's just a gnome and he makes annoying sounds. That's all we know about him, but a cute guy and also has his keyhole. Then we sort of see this in a funny way in a red card again, where the flavor says the giant had heard of locks, but he had yet to discover a door he couldn't open. So this giant, he isn't angry or something, he just wants to know about this magical thing that is called a lock. And he can't find it because apparently it is meant to keep people out, but every time he tries a door, he just can't get through it, so he doesn't understand. Back to Ventress, and their sort of lord, that has nothing to do with their virtue per se, is Gadwick the Wizened. His name is spoken only in whispers, but he hears just the same. And something I want to point out here is this folio with wings that many people on Eldraine use. You see these candles, which are the lights that also are a theme on Eldraine, and we see the sort of lock in the background, the lock shape. These folios, they are all around, you can see one here. And we can know that this is in Ventress because we see the lock shapes again, even in the book itself. One other guy that knows a lot about locks is Skullknocker Ogre, who crashed through the massive door. And the winged folios, again these flying books scattered like frightening birds, so it seems like he entered in Ventress as well, but he took another route and didn't really seem to care about opening it with a lock. So you can see why Ventress doesn't have locks, they have no use for it at all. Then I found one art with an island where you can see Ventress in a very beautiful way. You can see the lock, that it is above, and you can see how it seems to float above the water, but it really doesn't, it stands in it. Moving into the wilds, and yes, I keep changing shirts. This is taking so long, but I like it. Moving into the wilds, we first look at the fairies. So there are three kinds of fairies, and here we see the first one, which is the kind that steals. They don't really have real names. It's like, I think, steely fairies. They are small and they steal stuff. It says here as well, a fairy's glee at her trove quickly fades to contentment, to boredom, to an urge to steal more. So they never stop. You might know this one from the enchantment decks too. The fairy, they sort of, well, they make agreements, but you must know that they often just trick you into doing stuff. So here it says, at the market no one heeded Hilda's frantic mooing. This is Hilda. The fey curse was turning out even worse than she had feared, so this was probably some time before just a human. And she's now being sold. Don't know what will happen, but this guy has a big knife. So you might know that they are often a bad omen, but some of them can be good. So here we have one that is good. It is still one. Well, we are not really sure actually what kind this is of, because we don't really see their size. But there is a fully human sized kind that is called the meddling fairy, which does have a real name. And these fae, they help people, but they also sometimes trick them, so you don't really know whether they are helping you or not. But they like to meddle with people's adventures. It says here, no one is so lost that the fairy can't find them. So sometimes they will guide you, but you don't know where. Here we see a bit from the Tales of the Fae. The white fox grinned. How about the bat, dragon? If I win, the skies are mine. If after he stopped laughing, the dragon agreed. And you can see that the skies are now the foxes. So he won. But why is this in the Tales of the Fae? Well, the Fae, they want to tell each other about other creatures that tricked bigger creatures, because they are usually small and they like to trick bigger creatures too. I am not sure what kind the Hushbringer is yet. It says, let's begin this conversation again, and this time you will only listen. I am not sure. It doesn't seem like the third kind, so I'm sure that is not it. It seems kind of like a meddling fairy because of all the lights and stuff, so it might be that thing. Because it's definitely not very tiny and it doesn't really seem to be stealing anything. It seems to be playing with people and these weird real mouths. This is definitely a meddling fairy. It says mysterious pathlighter. That is what they do. For good or ill. Most fae can't resist meddling, so definitely a meddling fairy. In the adventures of any knight they meet. You can see these lights that are important as a theme in Eldraine, and you can see why now. They are often off the fae. This is definitely a stealing one, Brazen Borrower. 3 mana fairy that has stolen from Embereth. You can see from the wooden palisades here. And he has stolen a vial, we don't really know what, and someone is running after him. It's fun to look sometimes at these popular cards, more than anything, because you have seen them so often, but really haven't looked at what happens here. It's a blue card in a red castle. So didn't say please, it's one of the small ones. This is actually one that seems to be meddling, but apparently is about stealing. We can maybe see because they wear a key or something, might be that. But didn't say please, these can be tricksters as well, apparently. If you're in our home, we expect you to mind your manners, which means say please or you will be silenced. Fae of Wishes might be meddling too, but I'm not really sure. It's also really fun that they all have these different kinds of wings, and theirs is like a leaf, a fall leaf. So I like that too. Nothing really else here, but I thought because it was so famous that we would notice a bit of the art here. Fairy Vandal is definitely a small one as well, so seems to be one of the stealing ones. But maybe they are like more of tricksters too. They are also stealing knowledge, so maybe that is one part of it. It says history may be written by the triumphant, but it's often rewritten by the troublesome. If you're wondering how I got this information, by the way, it's because it's in the Planeswalker's Guide to Eldraine. I want to point out a little bit from the Book of Fae, which is a story about these mice that love to carry this carriage, let's say. It has been enchanted, it is from a famous story, and of course the mechanical story about this is that these 2 mice can crew this carriage. And then it says, long after the magic wore off, the mice still dreamed of glorious galloping. Well, they weren't really horses, apparently they dreamed of it anyway. Maybe they were galloping in front of the carriage anyways. But you can see it's the same one because of the pumpkin. Another story I wanted to point out, which is about this crystal slipper, actually. Well, it does say something in the flavor here as well. It mostly says that Cassia has run away and went beyond the Great Henge. And here you can see the Wildwood Tracker, who is an elf with a fox again, who says this one was wearing shoes made of glass. She'll be no ordinary prey, which is funny because the shoes gave haste, so she must be fast. Moving on with a little bit more about some of the elves. You can see here the rose thorns again, which is such a big theme for them. What is important is these people have been lost in the woods for a long time, even though they have been so strong for even longer. But now they belong to the wilds, and you can see that they are because their equipment says it only attaches immediately to non-human creatures. The forest helps the non-humans. You can see the theme again, and definitely here in Rosethorn Acolyte, who is playing with roses as well. She's also an elf. Old battlefields make great gardens, so rich from the blood of the fallen. You can see that whenever there's a battlefield, they will be around to feed the forest. And Lovestock Beast also with some roses. A very popular card in Standard, I believe, at the time. Basically, his lore is that he creates a 1/1 human, so he has a desire for them and he takes them with him. And then his mind chose solitude, but his heart disagreed. He can't be alone, then he can't attack. So, moving on, giants and the giant killer who says, what size disadvantage? They never even see me coming. It's a problem, and I think the most fun part about this is I really don't know how this art works. So I think the giant must be standing here. So this is from below, but he is cutting a tree, so he must be standing himself like this. I really don't know how this works. Or maybe he is falling or sitting or lying down or something. He's cutting the tree onto the giant. I think it's fun to look at, but I really don't have the answer. We move on to Shepherd of the Flock, which is, I think, at Garenbrick, judging from this formation. Not all heroes carry swords. I think a fun part where we know that humans and elves as well try to get people back from the wilds. It can be a dangerous place. The Queen of Ice, I would like to see more of her in the new set because she intrigues me, but I don't know what she's about. I think they just wanted a freeze effect where you tap something and it doesn't untap the next untap step. But yeah, I don't really see the use. It's a common, it should tell a story. She has some patterns from Ventress, but I'm pretty sure she's not from there because it's a queen and Ventress doesn't have queens. So I don't really know what she is of and what her story is. Like, did they just want a Disney reference or not sure. Here we have the Order of Midnight, which is a group of people that alter the fates of people who got lost as well. So they also go into the wilds. You can see this lamp here as well, which is like a sort of like the theme I said before. And they always ride on ravens, which I think is fun because these ravens can be dangerous when they are in the wilds. We move on. We see a word, Maraleaf, which is a place. It is a forest actually. And this one is the Maraleaf Rider, which sort of tells us that the elves live in Maraleaf as well. They are not the only ones, but well, I would like to know more about these places. Maybe we will get to explore more of the wilds and their stories as well, just instead of just the realms. Maraleaf Pixie as well, just like I said, from there. So another one from that forest. And it says a little bit about the forest and the flavor here. Neither hostile nor friendly, pixies flit through the forest seeking the treasures of the wilds. Yeah, not really sure what they look for, but one cool part about this art is like the animal pelt she's wearing, which must be a very small one, maybe a squirrel or something. Are there squirrels on Eldraine? We don't really know, I think. I've seen all the cards, I've looked at them extensively actually, so I'm sure there aren't yet. They do feel like they belong there, but I haven't seen them yet. We have Sporecap Spider, which Ayara has been using some spiders as well lately. But here we see the witches use them. After years of taunts and aerial assaults from Rankle's minions, the witches of Maraleaf Forest, Maraleaf again, acquired new familiars. And this is because they need the spiders because they have the reach to like kill Rankle's minions. And the Yara used them for the same thing, so it seems like spiders are like a natural enemy to the fairy as well, which is a piece of lore that we, well, it exists, obviously, but not really clearly. Going on with more elves, and we see some of the third kind of fae that we haven't really seen much about, but Renko is one of those as well. And they are like the real trickster kind. They are dangerous. They can kill humans out of nowhere because they like to trick them in gruesome ways, gruesome manners. Wildborn Preserver, though, I think was used a bit in like a mono green Stompy. And we can see that they ride on foxes. And I think this is an interesting piece, that they have their own kinds of mounts. And we saw the Emberath one, which uses dragons. We saw the Unicorn one. But the elves all seem to use foxes. And I want to know more about them. We never see anything about them in the flavors. Yeah, and I wonder, they seem to be fast. They seem to be smart, I guess, from the one flavor we got about the Flutterfox. But the fact that they do ride on them is like... it should tell us something about them, and we know about the griffins a little bit. Maybe we should learn more about the foxes. But the elves, here's some proof about them being underground now, but having some power before. The elves remember every secret path from the days when they ruled the realm. So it is true what I'm saying, basically. Here they are again on a fox. But you can see that they are kind-hearted still. I think this one is saving some humans. I believe they are humans, but I'm not sure. I don't see the big ears anyways. Oh, and we can see here as well that they create 2 human creature tokens. So yeah, definitely saving the humans. And yeah, just like I said before, stories aren't always the same when you talk about one type. Another fairy here, back to them, I guess. Tome Raider, so they are also all about stealing knowledge, like I said before. So that does seem to be true about the stealing kind of fairy, where she says humans are so forgetful. Every page, which she has here, I steal, becomes a secret they can't remember. Just a common, probably haven't seen it much before, but hadn't noticed the cat there either. I switched shirts again, and also I cut my finger in true knightly fashion. But we're going on with this more beautiful art than you'd expect. The theft of memory, which is saying that these ravens, they steal baubles, yes, still, but they also steal memories. Don't know how or what they do with it, but they do. Maybe they make nests with them, I don't know, but maybe we'll learn more in the next set. And what we see in this art, which is why I think it is better than you might think, is of course the ravens leaving from his face, the hole in his helmet. But we can also see that this guy is from Ardenville. We see the sun on his shoulder here. We see like the circles here. But it feels like a little bit of a Ventress thing to have like a lock in his armor like that. So we are wondering, or I am, what kind of knight this is. Maybe it is of a different order in his castle, or what is happening. We don't really know. But ravens are more often in these pieces of art. Here we see the Revenge of the Ravens. Don't know how close this one is, but that's a little bit weird. You might know this one as it's annoying for token decks. It says here, Sir Tasdale declared that he never wanted to see the witch Igretta again. Her familiars quickly granted his request. You can also see here what the powers of witches can be, as there are many of these familiars. They have more powers, they can turn people into frogs. Which is funny because that is of course also a fairy tale. But yeah, this is one of the things that they said that frogs can do, which is be a prince and turn back into them when you kiss them. This is a witch art, and I know that you know this card, but did you know that there is a troll in the background? Or maybe it's a red cap? It seems to be a red cap actually. We are at the lock and we see the guy in the back. We also see sort of guiding lights here. And the lore of this witching well is that it was built by the Witch of Lochmere. Most of the wishes, not witches, it grants are its own. So sort of this well has its own will, and you can wish, but he will choose what you get. Then you can see that they are sort of taking a soul, which is also in a beautiful manner. Maybe this one has stolen this piece of jewelry, this amethyst, and now their soul is in the same color, leaving their head. They seem to be from Ardenville as well, judging from the circles here. And it says, into amethyst. Oh, I guessed that, to be honest. I pour envy's shadow. Well, of course I've read it before. Sorrow's gleam. Lure the one whose scorn I bore. So sort of maybe she was jealous of the amethyst, of the piece of jewelry, and now they have sorrow or something. Lure the one whose scorn I bore, that I may hear one final scream. So she was scorned, and now she wanted to hear one last scream before they died. And this incantation, which is pretty metal, is only because this witch wanted to hear one last scream. Moving on to the actual witches, here we see one that has like children's hands, which is a little bit... But the theme here is that they do horrible things, so yes. The first apple, actually. And this apple returned in the preview art for the new set as well. So then it was made of glass or crystal or something, but of course it is a theme in fairy tales anyways. You can see the tempting witch is holding out the apple and wants you to eat it, so that you will be poisoned. It says here, murder clad in crimson beauty, the apple I think. An end to life and love and duty. So these incantations, maybe they must rhyme, I'm not sure. You see the talisman, which you might know because it is a very strong card, definitely in a multiplayer format. You can see a sort of warped hand, which seems to be from the witch, and then more fingers in an even more warped hand. You only see one hand, so it might be her hand, I don't know. But of course you can look for anything and then pass the hand around. I don't know if I take that. Witches, they like vengeance. We saw that before, like in the first art or card we saw. You see here that maybe this is the scaffolding upon which they were ended. But here you can see they have a vengeance against humans, I would say. That is why you can choose a creature type and -3 all of them. The hex swept through the village, its citizens falling one by one. They also link with the wolves, which wolves are of course very different from the foxes that the elves use, and the wolves seem to be linked to witches, even though they aren't always friendly with them, but here they seem to be. It says here, from Marrowen, a barrow witch, which might become a character in the new set. You think these walls will protect you? You have a dim view of the power of the wilds, which first of all links the witches to the wilds, and of course to that wolf. That can apparently make wind happen, so might be a card as well later. There we have the witch's oven, which is very popular as well, but I guess you haven't looked at very closely, because I think the fun thing about this is actually in the art, because the light, you can see it here, that the light is on, but fire isn't. So where's this light coming from? Well, we don't know, but yeah, we are wondering at least. So a cottage here from them, this one not to be luring, or so it seems, but of course the lights of Eldraine are meant to lure people, so this is kind of a lure still, like one of those anglerfish. Here we have another one, which is a chittering witch, which is linked to the rats, where there are more cards that are linked to rats, and also of course again the thorns in the background. Basically a witch that sacrifices rats, but she seems to be friends with them at least. We see here the taste of death, and the second card, which is linked to apples actually. So apples seem to be linked with death in Eldraine, so definitely don't eat them anyways. You can see here that skulls are warped into versions of apples, and this one seems to have been eating it, but don't bite off too much or more than you can chew, something like that. I think that is what he learned. Hone the knives and mourn the least. Mourn the least? Hone the knife, so sharpen your knife, and mourn the least. 3 chimes to sound the sweet grim feast. 3 chimes, maybe 3 murders, and mourn the least. I don't know, but they seem to have turned these people into apples and now they will eat them, something like that. And it does say each player sacrifices 3 creatures, you create 3 food tokens, so you will be eating the creatures from your opponents, at least. That's what it says. More rat stuff though. We have the Piper of the Swarm, which is just a guy that does love his rats actually. It says if it has ears, it will dance to my tune, so anything will dance to his tunes, but I said he loves his rats, but he also likes to sacrifice 3 of them, so he sort of uses them to fear them away, and then they have to listen to his song, is something I think is happening here. And then he gains control of any creature, so with ears though. Should have said that in the mechanic. Sacrifice 3 rats, gain control of target creature with ears. But okay. And one more, the Mad Ratter, so it seems like witches, humans and goblins can, or rat caps, can control these rats. And this one actually has been putting sort of explosives on his rats. So, whenever you draw your second card, so there's that mechanic again. Create 2 1/1 red creature tokens. And it seems to be with some sort of discordance as well, but I'm not sure about this one actually, to be honest. It says gather round and tell me all from the courts and castles. Oh, they are not meant to explode. Oh, so it might be still an unlikely alliance because these rats are helping a goblin. Huh. Oh, these aren't explosives then, maybe just candles so they can see. What is this? Who thought of this? Johan Bodin, why? Why do they need to have these in their bags? That it is weird. But okay, they can see in the dark, can't they? There is another creature type that we haven't looked at yet, which is the Spectre. And here you can see one, even though I am not sure what it is. It might be the thing in front, might be the thing in the back. We honestly don't know, it might be both. But what it does is it harvests your fears, and maybe it can manifest it, and maybe this is the manifestation of that fear. And then, so what that does is someone discards 2 cards because their fear has been harvested. And then it says whenever it attacks, if the defending player has 2 or fewer cards, so if they are maybe afraid enough, or if they have lost their minds over being so afraid all the time, this Reaper of Night can fly, so it gains power when people are more afraid. So sort of showing us that he is using that fear as well. Maybe that is what happens. He turns into this. Maybe he is both. So this is him usually when he is harvesting the fear. And then when he attacks, he can turn into this because he has harvested enough fear. Something like that. Might be it. But here we see another one. So this is another Spectre, it seems. I feel like they can turn into anything because we have seen, I guess the guy in front wasn't there randomly. That shouldn't happen. And it seems like this is it. But apparently they have another power, which is loud noise. Imagine having your skeleton extracted through your ear 1 bone at a time. Might just be that they are shrieking in your mind. And you feel like it is loud, maybe something like that. Maybe they have mind control, something like that. What I like most about this is that they will probably, these Spectres will be either friends with the Ashiok, or they will be his enemies, and I'm not sure if he can share his nightmarish ways with some other creatures, or if he likes them. Again, wolves, they are sometimes friends with witches, but this one stalks them and tries to kill them. And then there are more wolves. So the Wicked Wolf, who is just someone who feeds on food. And then there's the Wolf's Quarry, where you can see the piglets running away, which is really sad. The boars, at least. And it says the monster was gaining on them. Twice it had found them. There was only one place left to hide. Usually in fairy tales, this will be alright though. You can see the rose thorns again, and in this art, I don't know if you have played it ever, but you can see the wolf in the back as well. Then there's the Gingerbread, which sort of will be in the next set, because the 2 gingerbread people will be actually in there. They have been in the trailers a lot. But we actually don't know if they are really in there. But I assume it because they are so prevalent in the art that they have shown. But seems like this one was like sort of patient zero or something. Maybe it was the all-father of all gingerbroods. But there's one more, which is the gingerbread cabin. I'm not really sure if this is just a house from gingerbread people or this is another witches thing, but could be both. And food is a big theme on Eldraine, so gingerbread people, that's one thing. There's the hungry people from Garenbrick and the wolves that like to eat way more. There's the apples that mean death or like poison. And then there's a bunch of people who are starving. So there's the savvy hunter who helps them. And it is hard to gain food because most of the wild things live in the wilds. And people don't really dare to go there. One other thing is that, so remember, food is a scarce thing. So people want to follow this. But this art actually, I want to look at more than anything because you can see two other themes. So there's food. There's like this trail of crumbs. There's the rose thorn things again. And there are the ravens in the back. So many things, and these all spell bad omens. More about food. This guy likes to eat a bunch. You may sacrifice the food to grow something to +5/+5. You can see piglets running away again. Not really sure if that's a theme. But pumpkins really are. You can see that it is eating some pumpkins. Then the Gilded Goose. There's one fun thing about this. You know this guy, of course. But see these eggs? They are here as well in the golden egg, which is also from the same set. Then turn into a pumpkin, because pumpkins, again, are a big theme here as well. And they seem to be also about death, what you saw before with the mice as well, that they can be a carriage. So they are maybe more neutral, but they seem to be a magical thing. In all. Not an apple, but foreboding fruit, which says you can draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. And then adamant, which means using 3 black mana, you create a food token as well. So if you are, in this set it should mean if you are persistent enough, you can create a food out of this as well. And otherwise you will learn stuff about, I don't know, this omen, but you will be scared about it, something like that. And a raven, of course, again. Once a future, another adamant card, and this one for green. What this one says is, so you have to use 3 green, then wait, you can return target card from your graveyard to your hand, put up to 1 other target card from your graveyard on top of the library. So you will get that later. So 2 back from your graveyard, you are fixing your next draw and you are getting 1 card into your hand, then you exile the card, because otherwise you can keep doing this. But if you pay 3 green mana, you return those both cards to your hand and exile the card. And it's interesting. So it says the flavor is once and future, right? And you can see in the art this is reflected. So you see once, like what someone is now. They are in Garenbrick, we can see from the stones. They are with their dog, which is 1 companion they have. And then they are on their horse as a knight later, wearing a hammer, of course. In Garenbrick, heavy weapons are loved. And I feel like it sort of says you can be strong later, which means you will get the card from your top of your library later, and right now you can get one. Or you can choose to be who you want to be later, right now, which is very Garenbrick of them, because actions mean way more there than words. So I feel like that is the flavor there, but it's a little bit of a far reach and I haven't really materialized it too much yet. But it seems to be your choice between being strong now and being strong later, or really being strong now. So either it's once and future, or once and once. And the last bit of stretch, which is the most important, I would say. I don't have any call to action for this video, but I want to thank you for watching if you are here. So we have the Planeswalkers of Eldraine and what is important about them. And kind of my suggestion for whether they should return to Eldraine. We have Carrick, which is a very funny character for Eldraine because he is the wild speaker and Eldraine literally has the wilds. So Carrick is perfect for this world. But when he was there, of course there was a lot that happened with him, even though people didn't really see it. His curse was broken, which is very relevant for him, and it really changes his character massively. I feel like he is the Planeswalker most in tune with actual nature, with wild stuff. He definitely has returned after this, and I think he should return. He should have met Liliana before, which is one thing why I might think he shouldn't return. But with Eldraine, he is such a good fit. He has learned so much on this world. I feel like he should return again. Garruk was, as his Planeswalker card there, the Cursed Huntsman, and he doesn't have the Planeswalker card yet for the non-Cursed Huntsman. And I feel like he needs it. I feel like he deserves it as well. He has learned so much. He has learned to care even for these 2 kids that he cared for. Then we have a little bit of a sidestep towards the Archons, which are the last creature type that I want to talk about here. The Archons are a really interesting creature type, but they do have a really messed up flavor. Their story is that they are the essence of not really perfection, but like taking something to the extreme. As you see here, the Archon of Absolution, they embody a concept, but not really. They embody the extreme of the concept. So for one thing that the Archons did was drive out the red caps out of the 5 realms of the elves before. That is, for example, one thing they did. So here you can see the Archon of Absolution is a flying Archon with protection from white that says that creatures can't attack you or a Planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 1 for each of those creatures, sort of protecting, I feel like, the realm from the enemies that are in the wilds. And I feel like these Archons have such an effect on this world that we should note that this is a deer, which is our last theme of the set, which we should note. Here we see another one which is also a deer, so you can definitely see that they are always there. And this isn't a rider on a deer. The rider and the deer are one creature. So here we see the Lord of the Archons, which is the Harmonious one. Here we already know that harmony can be taken to the extreme. We have seen it with Elish Norn, with the Phyrexians. But we see it here as well with the Archons, so we know what dangers these creatures bring. They want everything to be the same. They want everything to be in harmony. They want everything to be the same sound. They want all of Eldraine to be monotonous. And they could succeed if they are left alone. So what it says is that non-Archon creatures have base power and toughness, 3/3. They want to make everyone the same. The humans a bit stronger, the giants a bit weaker, everyone should be the same. And then when he ends the battlefield, you create 2 humans, because the humans are sort of attracted to this idea. Of course, they want to be stronger, and they want everyone to be the same, so that, well, they will win because they have the numbers. It says in the flavor, very shortly, first among equals. This is because these Archons are so absolute. He is the first among equals, and he will bring more. I wonder what the Archons will do for one, but again, note that this is a deer. And King Kenrith has been transformed into one as well. I think that Oko did this not just as a joke, but as a point, as a, let's say, note towards the civilization. So of course Oko is the trickster of the wilds, and he loathes the realms. I feel like he made King Kenrith into a deer because he was saying the realms are too complete. They are too stretched out towards their values and they hold on to it a little bit too much. They can't let go, and if they don't watch out, they will become one monotonous world, while Eldraine can be so much more. We see also in the art a few things, but mostly there is one of those trickster Fae in the back as well, sort of signifying that Oko does treat with them. A little bit more about knights. Before we saw into the story, here we see banish into fable, which is the other side of the coin. People can step into stories, people can be banished into stories. What this means exactly, we are not sure, but the fact that this can happen could be significant for the story of the next set. People could be banished into stories, people could go into stories, be lost there, change the stories, or let the stories change their worlds. And I feel like that is a sort of note towards the next set, where the Witch King might be brought out of a story into Eldraine, because who wouldn't have noticed such an important character? He might be brought out of the story into the world of Eldraine and might change the world because of that. And I think that Ashiok, being someone who can turn nightmares into sort of reality, might be what has done this. He might be very in tune with this sort of magic of getting people out of stories or fables and putting them into there. So I feel like he will be very strong in this set. One more thing I feel like is really cute is this jousting dummy, because he has been dubbed a Sir as well. So this is actually the last Sir that we will talk about. It is Sir Nobody, but he's still Sir. Don't let it fool you. Many of us got our first scars from Sir Nobody. And I hope that this will be an important character, but I really don't think so. Then one more, which is Sir Gwyn, which was the commander that we saw really far into the beginning, who shows us some, I think, Ardenvale knights here on the left, but also there are like the, well, we see a lion. We haven't seen lions before. We see a griffin here as well, but we also see the raven on the right. So we see Ardenvale and Locthwain working together, and she is the hero of Asheville, of which we haven't really seen a lot. So I wonder what this means. Will we see more about Asheville as well? I feel like this will be a very important character here as well, Gwyn. The Kenriths though, they are gone after the last set. What this means a lot. So, of course, they are gone. That's one thing. Two important characters are gone. But Oko has noted, I feel like, towards his people, that these were the people that were keeping harmony in the realms. So things will change, is basically what I think this says, first of all. Then we need to look at the mechanic of it. Because it says when it enters the battlefield, you exile 2 legendary creature cards from your graveyard. Those are the Kenriths. You draw X cards and you lose X life. You get resolve, is basically what I gather from this, which is the drawing of cards, and you lose X life because the news hurts you. Because I feel that this is because X is the greatest mana value among cards exiled this way. It sort of says to me, because such a great person was lost, people feel this much pain, they also feel this much resolve to change things. And then it says, which is almost more important, legendary spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card exiled with the Kenrith's Royal Funeral. So if you have exiled 2, you can make your legendary spells cost 2 less. And this means I feel like heroes will stand up. And we see this in the art where 2 knights are kneeling in front of them, their resolve is there, and they will stand up. So I sort of feel like this is room for new legendaries to enter the fray on Eldraine. Some of those are Will and Kenrith, the son and daughter of the Kenriths, who have found the king before, and now they will return to their home plane after going to Strixhaven with Liliana Note, so I feel like she has a chance of at least popping up. Who found their king and then lost their father. Rohan, well, we saw Will before in the art of the set that has been shown by Wizards itself, so it's not a leak. But Rohan we haven't seen, well, we have seen in art but not in key art yet, so I feel like she will actually play a bigger role here. Maybe we will follow her around, because that would basically be interesting. It would also be interesting to see, because we saw 2 separate pieces of art for them, and of course we have this Planeswalker card of Rohan aside from Will, but I feel like the fact that we see them apart from each other, adventuring apart from each other as well in Rohan's art, I feel like that means that we will see how they react to the death of their father, the chaos in the realms, on their own. So we sort of we'll see their own personalities. And I feel like they have the potential to be really interesting characters for the story of Magic the Gathering. Rohan, we should learn a bit more about her before we end this off, is a knight. She is fearless, and this of course fits in with the theme of Embereth. So I feel like she will join Embereth. Here it says, this sword is sunrise, the other is dawn. They mark the beginning of my days, but the end of yours. Of course, no shield on this knight, just 2 swords. So definitely Rohan is an Embereth knight. See her stalwarts as well here, which just search for her. And there's of course Will, and we know a little bit less about him, but he is a guy that freezes people. That's what we know. He has lost his hand on Strixhaven, or leg, what was it? Leg, I feel. And he changed it with his own ice, which I think is really metal. It's really ice, to be honest. But I feel like he might be actually a little bit more careful in this, and he might, well, of course he is the blue part of this card, so he must be Ventress. But I'm really not sure. I don't really feel like he fits in with Ventress, because he isn't that careful, to be honest. He is compared to Rohan, but yeah, he does study. He does like to study, so maybe Ventress, but I still feel like that's not all he is, but okay. They will probably slot him in with it, if we are honest. And we will see a sort of careful guy, which I feel like would be a shame. But it will be what happens. But still will be interesting to see if they can make these characters touch us, and I hope they will sort of play with them, not just make them Embereth and Ventress, but make them something of their own. But we will see, and I want to again to thank you for watching. Have a nice day.